Uh-oh, something happened at work. Maybe you were discriminated against, or maybe you were harassed. Maybe you reported something and suddenly everything changed, and now you're trying to figure out whether you can actually do something about it, or whether you just have to live with it. Good news, you don't just have to live with it, but there are deadlines, and if you miss them, you may permanently lose your right to act. I'm going to show you exactly how to file a complaint against your employer the right way in the right place before you run out of time. Here's exactly what you're getting in this video. First, I'm going to walk you through the two paths available to you, an internal HR complaint and a government agency complaint, and what each one actually does. Second, I'll walk you through the step-by-step process for filing with the EEOC, the federal agency that handles workplace discrimination and harassment claims. Third, you'll get your to-do list, the specific steps to take before you do anything else. If you find this useful, then please hit subscribe. New video every Tuesday on the legal stuff most employees don't know they need to know. I'm an attorney. I've worked these cases from both sides. Let's get into it. Key insight number 1, the two paths to filing a complaint. When something goes wrong at work, you have two main paths for filing a complaint. They are not the same thing and they don't do the same thing. But choosing one does not prevent you from doing the other. The first path is an internal HR complaint. You go to your HR department, you report what happened, and you ask them to address it. This is internal. But HR works for the company. Their job is to protect the company, not you. That doesn't mean you shouldn't file one. I'll explain why in a moment, but you do need to understand what it is and what it isn't. The second path is a government agency complaint. You file with the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or your state's equivalent agency. This is external. It's a federal complaint. It creates an official record. In most cases, it's a required step before you can sue your employer in federal court. Most situations call for both. File internally to create a record and give the company notice. File externally to protect your legal rights and preserve your ability to pursue the claim. Coming up next is an on-screen graphic that more thoroughly demonstrates the pros and cons of filing an HR complaint and an EEOC complaint. Key insight number 2, human resources. Let me be honest about HR. HR's job is to protect the company. That means when you file an internal complaint, HR is going to investigate, but they're going to do it to find out what the company's liability exposure is, not to advocate for you personally. That said, filing an internal HR complaint still matters. Here's why. It puts the company on notice. If the company fails to act after you've given them notice, that failure becomes evidence. It creates a paper trail. It may trigger an internal investigation that resolves the situation before it escalates. And in some cases, it's required by law. Certain harassment claims require you to have used the company's internal complaint process before you can hold them liable. I've seen some internal complaints resolve situations quickly, but I've also seen them go nowhere. The key is filing in writing, keeping copies of everything, and not assuming that filing internally means you've protected all your legal rights. It doesn't. File your HR complaint in writing. Send it by email so you have a timestamp and a record. Follow up in writing. Keep everything. Key insight number 3, the EEOC. The EEOC is the federal agency that enforces workplace anti-discrimination laws. If you believe you were discriminated against, harassed, or retaliated against at work, the EEOC is almost always where you need to file. What the EEOC covers: discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age if you're older 40 or older, disability, and genetic information. Harassment based on any of those characteristics. And retaliation, meaning your employer punished you for reporting discrimination, filing a complaint, or participating in an investigation. Now here's the part I need you to pay close attention to. You have 180 days from the date of the discriminatory act to file with the EEOC. In states that have their own anti-discrimination agency, which is most states, that deadline extends to 300 days. But 300 days sounds like a long time, until it isn't. I've seen people come to attorneys after the deadline is passed. There is almost nothing that can be done at that point. The claim is gone. Not weakened, gone. The deadline is not flexible. Miss it and you may permanently lose your right to pursue the claim in federal court. File as early as possible. Do not wait to see if things get better. Do not wait until you're fired. File while the evidence is fresh and the deadline is not a factor. Key insight number 4, how to file step by step. Here's how to actually file an EEOC complaint. Step 1, go to eeoc.gov and use the online portal. Create an account and complete the intake questionnaire. That's Form 283. You can also file by mail or in person at a local EEOC office, but the online portal is the fastest and creates the clearest record. Step 2, gather your documentation before you file. You don't need everything. You can supplement later, but start with the basics. Dates and descriptions of what happened, the names of witnesses, any relevant emails or messages, and any documentation of how you were treated differently from others in similar situations. Step 3, be specific. Vague complaints are harder for the EEOC to act on. Name the specific acts, the specific dates, the specific people involved, and the specific protected characteristic you believe was the basis for the discrimination or harassment. Step 4, keep a copy of everything you submit. Request confirmation of your filing. Note your charge number. You'll need it for all future communications. The EEOC will then notify your employer and begin the process. I'll explain what happens next in a moment. Key insight number 5, what happens after you file? After you file, the EEOC notifies your employer. Your employer then has the opportunity to respond with a position statement. The EEOC may offer mediation, a confidential, voluntary process where both sides try to reach a resolution. Mediation is faster than a full investigation. If you're open to a settlement, mediation is worth considering. If mediation doesn't happen or doesn't resolve the issue, the EEOC investigates. But this can take months to years. The EEOC is significantly underfunded and handles an enormous volume of cases. Manage your expectations about the timeline. At the end of the investigation, one of two things happen. Either the EEOC finds reasonable cause to believe discrimination occurred and attempts to reach a conciliation agreement with your employer, or the EEOC issues a right to sue letter, which means the investigation didn't result in a finding, but you have 90 days to file a lawsuit in federal court. A right to sue letter is not a defeat. Many successful employment discrimination cases go to court after the EEOC process. The EEOC process is often just the required first step, not the final word. Key insight number 6, retaliation. One more thing before your to-do list. Filing a complaint, internal or with the EEOC, is a protected activity. Your employer cannot legally punish you for doing it. If they do, that's retaliation, and retaliation is its own separate legal violation on top of the original complaint. Retaliation doesn't have to be firing. It can be a demotion, a reduction in hours, a sudden negative performance review, being excluded from meetings, being reassigned to a worse role, or a hostile change in your work environment. If any of those things happen after you file a complaint, document it immediately. Note the date, what happened, who was involved, and how it compares to how you were treated before you filed. That documentation is the foundation of a retaliation claim. I've seen retaliation claims result in larger settlements than the original discrimination claim. Your employer retaliating after you file is often the clearest evidence that something was wrong to begin with. Here's your to-do list. 5 steps, start today. Step 1, count your days. What date did the discriminatory act occur? You have 180 days, possibly 300 if your state has its own agency. Write that deadline down right now. Step 2, file your internal HR complaint in writing today. Email HR, describe what happened, keep a copy. That puts your employer on notice and starts the internal record. Step 3, start documenting everything. Dates, times, names, what was said, what happened, witnesses. Write it down while it's fresh. Save every relevant email and message. Step 4, go to eeoc.gov and begin the online intake process. You don't have to complete it today, but you should get started and don't let the deadline sneak up on you. And step 5, if anything changes at work after you file, any negative treatment whatsoever, document it immediately and note it as potential retaliation. I know that if you've been watching this, you're probably dealing with something difficult. Filing a complaint against your employer is not easy, professionally or emotionally. But you do have rights, and protecting them starts with knowing the deadline and using the process. Drop your situation in the comments. What happened, and where are you in the process? I'll read every comment, and those real situations will help shape exactly what I cover in future videos. If this was useful, subscribe. New video every Tuesday. And if your situation started with a PIP or a performance issue and you want to understand how those two things connect, I covered that in the previous video. It's linked above. See you on Tuesday.